So Runway have dropped a banger, namely Act 2, the follow-up to their face performance capture for both image and video. And this time we've got some surprises. So today we're going to run through the new feature, see what it's great at, what I've learned, and what it's not great at, plus, of course, community examples. Make sure your seats are in the upright position. We are cleared for takeoff and headed down the runway. Now, just as an FYI, currently this is in early beta access. That said, it is Runway. They don't hold on to stuff for too long. I don't have any inside information, but they do love their Friday drops. Further, Act 2 now adds to the growing arsenal of tools available on the Runway platform. Since Act 1 was released, we've gotten things like frames and references. So I figured this would be a good time to fire off a quick test short utilizing the new Act 2 feature. Let's check it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars.
Good evening, Eleanor.
My God, Arthur, people are losing their minds. The switchboard has been lit up for the last 20 minutes. Does he even know what he's doing?
Orson? Oh, trust me, he knows. He lives for this.
He's going to get arrested. How did he even come up with this lunatic idea?
Oh, I gave him the idea. He'd deny it, of course, boy genius and all that. But no, the idea was mine. His ego simply doesn't know it.
You? You're a financial banker. Why go creative? You're always telling us we're broke.
The plan, Eleanor. It's all part of the plan.
What plan?
Well, this is simply the first test to see if they'll believe a story coming out of a box over their own senses. Once that happens, we can make them doubt the sky itself. A few strange lights in the sky, a crashed weather balloon. Soon, their leaders become liars.
I don't think I'm following.
Don't worry, Eleanor. Eventually you will. Maybe when the impossible puzzles begin showing up in crop fields. Or should you live a long and natural life, as I certainly hope you do, Eleanor, you may find yourself wondering, was that film star in that movie? Was that children's book always named that way? That will all be part of the plan.
Arthur, have you been hanging the sauce again?
I assure you, I remain dry. The real masterpiece, though, is when we let them do the work for us, when we give them the ability to create their own truth, when we give them the power to put their words into my mouth or my words into, say, the president's mouth, when they can no longer trust their own eyes or ears, when they're all lost in a fog of their own making. Yes, 2027, it sounds so far-fetched, so science fiction, doesn't it? But it'll be here before you know it.
And what happens in 2027?
Huh, we invade.
We? The communists?
No. My people are far above any kind of political ideology. You might say far above.
Arthur, stop this. This isn't funny anymore.
Oh, but it is. Look into my eyes, Eleanor, and tell me I'm lying. You can tell anyone you want. They'll never believe you.
So that was a lot of fun to make. I put that together in somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 hours this morning. And while there are some kind of wonky and buggy shots that I would definitely want to fix, I was under a deadline. I had to get this video done. That said, I did learn a lot about Act 2 along the way. So let's do a quick breakdown of this. So Act 2 is pretty interesting. You can access it via the video tab in Runway, and then just come down here to, you have use text prompt, and just instead change that over to perform with Act 2. From there, you can choose to upload either an image or driving video. In this case, actually, we will take a look at the first run that I did. I'll upload this image of not cruise. From there, you can add in a driving performance, either utilizing your webcam or uploading your own video. So if you hit the record button, your webcam will come up. This is weird. And once you hit the little red button there, it'll give you a countdown of 3, 2, 1, and it'll start recording. Once you have your input video loaded, you simply hit generate and off it goes. Yeah, well, this is the test of our first roll at Act 2. Let's go do this thing. And admittedly, while a bit of a mess, I did find it really interesting that Act 2 would essentially give the character sort of a narrative reason, an object to grab and hold when I reached out for my microphone. In this case, in the input image, we do have a phone, so I think it's kind of going for that phone thing. The other thing that I noticed is that it actually will animate your background. We did get our helicopter chop here and some fire going on back here as well. So yeah, pretty cool. So for the opening establishing shots, I definitely knew I wanted to nail Orson Welles performing the broadcast. So initial shots via references were a little, I mean, definitely has his likeness, but wasn't quite hitting it where I wanted it to be. A few more subsequent rolls and using a different reference image definitely got us a lot closer. But ultimately I did land on actually using an archive footage of him giving the performance and then animated that in Gen 4. So from there, I then took that video and then, fired up the old webcam. Did run into two problems here. One, that Orson's original narration runs at 21 seconds, and then the video that I generated was only 10 seconds. Interestingly, Act 2 will actually make up that difference, although we're going to see where the problems begin in just a minute. Now, performance-wise, for me, this was pretty miserable because essentially I had to take Orson's original dialogue and then essentially just kind of lip sync along with it. Getting that timing right sucks. So after about 10 takes, I did get into the ballpark with it and ended up with this result. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes. Now, you'll note that the problems start around here, where we get a little bit of like decoherence and morphing on the headset here. And then as the generation continues, like his eye definitely like super bugs out pretty hard. On a subsequent roll, we actually ended up with Orson looking directly at camera. And well, that taught me that your head orientation actually does play a pretty big part in Act 2. So ultimately what ended up working for me, and this is probably going to be slightly out of sync, was essentially matching the orientation of his head and doing the performance that way, which was really, really hard to do, by the way. Moving over to the main part of our narrative, I ended up generating up a location, essentially kind of like the control room of the radio station where they're doing the broadcast, generated up some reference images for our characters. These were some choices for Eleanor, and then landed on this guy for the character of Arthur. Looking dapper, sir. I know this photo isn't in color. I'm just imagining that that is a blue wool suit. And then from there, it was really just a matter of getting them all together in the same room. So using Runway's references, this was simply giving me an establishing shot of studio with Tom, apparently his name was Tom very early on, and Eleanor, are sitting in chairs, black and white photo. And yeah, sure enough, we now have them in the same room. From there, it was just a matter of generating up some, close-up shots of both characters. I knew that I didn't have a lot of time for this, so I didn't go elaborate with a lot of shots. Now, one thing I do want to note that if you do run into an issue here, like with the character of Arthur here, where you're getting sort of bullseye composition, you can direct references with something like, Tom/Arthur sitting in the chair of the studio, keep focus on the left side of the studio ref image. And then again, Arthur Tom is looking to the right side. It's pretty good with this. So shooting it all on my DJI Pocket, I did not at the time realize that, once again, my head needed to be orientated the same way that Arthur's here is. That said, I do think it kind of comes off like it more or less works. So one thing I might recommend, well, that's a frame, isn't it? Is just to record all of your performances in more or less in one go. And then you can always bring it in and chop it up afterwards. And then after that, you can simply lay your Act 2 performances on top of those clips. My original audio was then, of course, taken over to ElevenLabs voice changer. Actually, the voice of Arthur is Burt Reynolds. Go figure. Hopping back over to Act 2, there's that frame again. You'll note that we do have a couple of options. There's also a settings tab over here, which will allow you to change around your facial expressiveness. I found 4 to be pretty good for me. It defaults at 3. And then the other thing that you'll definitely want to make sure is that you have gestures turned on. So that is perform with Act 2 here, and this gestures slider is on. Rounding out with some final thoughts on this piece before moving over to some additional tests. Look, we do end up with some weird stuff happening, like in this shot where, this guy just kind of teleports in from the background. Maybe he's one of the aliens. At one point, this background clock just starts going super haywire, but this is at the point where Arthur's going over the plan. So, I don't know, narratively it kind of works. And although the eye lines don't quite match, that is something that I now know for next time, I do have to say that there's nothing quite like, being able to generate with your own performances. Whether my performance is good or not is completely up to you. I don't think it's that good. It's okay. But there is just something really gratifying about knowing that underneath this is me or you or someone that we cast. So let's go check out some other experiments plus some more tips. But before we do, a quick word from today's sponsor, Spotter Studio. And actually, you might want to check this one out. This one is actually about one of my favorite videos that I've done on the channel. So if you're a content creator, particularly on YouTube, you know that packaging is more than half the game. You can have a great video, but if no one clicks, no one watches. Now, one video of mine that I actually really did love, but it kind of ended up underperforming, was one that I did last year where I went to a big Hollywood tech event to give a talk. Nico from Corridor was giving the talk before me, so, terrifying. But I also was covering the event itself, and that happened to be the week that Soar also dropped, so it's kind of a packed video. And to be honest, I never really had a clear idea on how to accurately portray all of that in a title and a thumbnail. Well, our friends at Spotter Studio, who were kind enough to sponsor today's video, reached out, and I thought that this might make for an interesting experiment to see how this could have been packaged. Now, although we're going at this a bit from the back end as the video has already been made, just know that this would be a spot where you can begin brainstorming your idea. As it happens, we actually, know our idea. In this case, I'm just going to give it a very light outline of what the video is about. From there, obviously, we can brainstorm out the title, the thumbnail, and the concept. From here, we can start playing around with title ideas. There's a neat feature in here as well, where if you like something, you can kind of hit this little button here and have additional changes made, and then explode it, rephrase it, shorten it, shift the mood, or power up. Now, here's the really cool thing, is because Spotter Studio knows my channel, there's actually a slider down here where you can control the temperature for, more in YouTube's best practices or in the style of my own titles. You can even text prompt in keywords to help narrow your message. From here, we can move into concepts where we can continue to workshop on our central idea. And yeah, as you can see, while this video has already been made, we can see that Spotter Studio is picking up on the central idea and more importantly, the vibe. We do have a nemesis who is Nico, who is nice enough to play the villain in the video, but it's also very, humorous. So it does know that, he's not truly evil. And then there's the whole section on auto-generating thumbnails, which is actually pretty awesome. Now, I do want to point out, I know that on the channel we focus a lot on AI imagery, and there are definitely a lot of imagery wizards out there. This is not meant to be final product. This is more meant to sort of start brainstorming ideas with a particular focus on imagery that tends to work on YouTube for thumbnails. But still, going through this process, we managed to go from the original thumbnail, which looked like this, a little bit on the bland side. This one had a pretty cool concept as well, and as I'm thinking about it, we could actually probably do it with a photo shoot and some work in flux context. So ultimately, I did end up revising it to this, which I will admit is still not quite there yet. But this is also a video from over a year ago, so I'm not going to get too crazy about it. That said, it is also stupidly better than, the YouTube auto-generated thumbnail, which gave us this. Just read that title. That is a mess. Now, again, we are coming at all of this from a pretty backwards direction, considering that the video has already been made. Hey, shout out to Spotter Studios for letting me get weird here. I do want to point out that if you were to use Spotter Studio, as intended, before actually shooting your video, there is this story beats section as well that kind of goes through the video concept and breaks it down into a format that works really well for YouTube videos. Now, I think it's important to note that Spotter Studio is not writing your script for you. It's not a hack to trick the YouTube algorithm. It's a tool to help you fine-tune your idea into a package that works on YouTube. So yeah, definitely not a one-click to AI slop generator. YouTube's going to crack down on that any minute now anyhow. but rather an AI tool to help you create videos that work. So if you're thinking about getting serious with your channel, well, actually good news. Spotter Studio is running a limited time summer deal, a yearly membership to Spotter Studio for $99, and that is 80% off the original price. Link is down below. My thanks to Spotter Studio for sponsoring today's video. So continuing on with a few more tests, I took this 9:16 video and fed it in with a couple of different restylizations on that. It does not seem to work. So setting it to 9:16, I just ended up erroring out. So that may be something that is not available as of yet. Quick tip on hands. I actually ended up taking a screenshot of myself and restylized it in Midjourney as a pirate. I do love the fact that it gave me kind of this pirate themed wooden microphones. Pretty cool. Let's take a look at what we got. So testing out with some movement and some hands in the frame. This seems to be something that really helps with hand generation if you begin your shot with hands in the frame. So that ended up looking pretty good. Let's try it out again without hands in frames, utilizing this as a first frame restylization, see what we get. If you do not begin with hands in the frame and bring them in, sometimes results can be a little wonky. I'm not sure what that ended up looking like. Well, I got to admit, actually not that bad. Although we did run into an issue with it in our War of the Worlds short when Eleanor raised up her hands. Looking back on it, it's not too bad, actually. They just kind of come off a little bit like man hands. Yes, that is a Seinfeld reference. Now, Runway does say that Act 2 is mostly meant for like kind of medium shots, essentially waist-high shots, because really what this is about is, capturing facial performance. But I was curious to see what would happen if we took, say, a video like this and then attempt to restylize it into something like this. And well, as it turns out, no, that actually does not work. And that's okay if that's not what this tool is for. And you can always use it to generate your dialogue shots and then cut to your action generations as a friend of the channel, the real robot, Dale, does here. So you can see up in this corner, we have Dale actually, miming out everything. And then as that little picture-in-picture vanishes out, we are now into just straight generation. So yeah, this stuff works really well for this. Purz takes it out with some dialogues and some facial expressions and kind of a Thunderbirds or Team America, depending on how old you are, experiment here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
By the way, if you're interested in learning Comfy, Purz's channel, definitely a resource for you. I'll have a link to his channel down below. Andy Osro shows us that Act 2 is pretty capable of handling animals.
Oh, it's you. I'm so glad you're here. Step into my trash can. Come on.
And Runway's Timmy showcased that props, you could use props. And finally, AI Warper gives us a pretty interesting comparison between Act 2 and WAN 2.1 Vase. To me, both are good. I'm not going to say one killed the other. I don't do that here. But yeah, I mean, Act 2 does look pretty good. So obviously there is a ton more exploration and experimentation that I really want to do in Act 2. I'll definitely be covering Act 2 more, especially as new features roll out for it. But in the meantime, yeah, kudos to Runway. I've really been looking forward to this. And as always, I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.